Welcome to Sports Note for November 8th. I apologize if I sound a little off. I'm kind of getting over a minor bout of the flu after coming back from Georgia last week, but it's a bit of a historic entry here on the Sports Note. No, it's not entry 250 or 500 or anything like that. It's ironically enough the final entry of where I will have all four professional sports leagues done. The last one that was hanging out there were the Indiana Pacers, and we've really not had a lot to talk about with the Pacers since I started this blog 6 years ago that anything jumped off the page. But now the Pacers are not only jumping off the page, the Pacers are essentially jumping out of the gym. Now, even though it's early, teams haven't even hit 10 games yet, the Pacers are right now sitting at 4-3. They're a half game back in Milwaukee in the Central Division, and there's a lot of experts out there and writers, myself included, that thinks that this is going to be a transition year for the Pacers for all the right reasons. Every year, there's a team in the NBA that takes a step forward that didn't make the playoffs or had a drought for several years before that. Last year it was the Sacramento Kings breaking their nearly 2-decade playoff drought. The year before that it was the Cavaliers getting into the play-in tournament, winning nearly 50 games with the youngest team in the NBA. There's a lot of signs right now that point to this could be that type of year for the Pacers. You look at who they've got out there. Bruce Brown, very good defender. Buddy Hield, 30 years old. He's actually one of the older statesmen on this roster right now. And let's also keep in mind, kind of pausing, going through the roster here for a moment, Buddy Hield was was the focal point of a trade that the Pacers made with the Kings at the 2022 deadline, and the Pacers had to do something because the Cavaliers had actually pursued, the Cleveland Cavaliers had pursued Buddy Hield and didn't actually end up doing that, and then ended up making a deal to get Karis LeVert away from the Pacers instead. But Buddy Hield was basically the glue that kind of held the Kings together, and then the Kings were in a bit of a rebuild and then took a massive step forward last year. And then Hield is also coming off a season where he made 280, I want to say it was 287 three-pointers, and that was third best in the entire NBA for last year. The only and where he finished, he was slotted right between the Splash Brothers. He finished second to Steph Curry, to Klay Thompson, who finished at 301, and Hield had 288, and he finished ahead of Steph Curry, who hit 273. So this is Buddy Hield going to hit 300 this year? Who knows? Probably not. But also you've got Aaron Nesmith, you've got Jordan Nwora on this team, you've got Jalen Smith on this team, Miles Turner as part of this team, Isaiah Wong. Now take Miles Turner out of the names that I just mentioned and add Obi Toppin in. Obi Toppin was actually the Knicks' first-round pick back in 2020. He was taken 8th overall. I got to see Obi Toppin personally, and there was a part of me that wanted the Cavaliers, my hometown Cavaliers, to draft Obi Toppin the year that I believe they ended up taking Isaac Okoro, and it ended up working out for both sides because, unfortunately, through his first 3 years, Toppin was kind of a role player and did not kind of take that next step with the Knicks, but also because the Knicks had Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and other high-priced talent, and those kind of worked out. So Toppin got moved for a couple of second-round picks and has already started to blossom as a starter with this young upstart Indiana Pacers team, and the Knicks are going to be able to start using some of those picks to be able to go out and maybe make a move for somebody like a Joel Embiid later on this year, depending on how the Philly situation shakes out now that James Harden was moved. But this is where, Toppin's only making $6.8 million. Miles Turner's making 20, and that's the highest salary on this. Well, I take that back. Bruce Brown's making 22, and Held's making 19. But the one guy I have not talked about yet is one of the 15 best players in the NBA, and ESPN came out with a list earlier this week of the top 25 players under 25, really at this point through the first week and a half of the season, and that's Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton has quickly become the best facilitator in basketball. He's not even 24 years old yet. 6'5", 185 from Iowa State. He's making $5.8 million. He leads the NBA in assists, and it's by over a full assist on average per game than the next closest player. That was actually up over 2 before those stats got updated over the weekend. And keep in mind that Halliburton was originally drafted by the Kings, and he was part of the deal that brought Buddy Hield to Indiana back in at that 2022 deadline. And Hield is kind of, no pun intended, held down the fort and allowed the Pacers to not be so much bottom dwellers, but certainly in the back half of the lottery. But it's now Halliburton's team, and he's taking this and he's just running with it. But going back very quickly to Toppin, with all of those names I mentioned, Nembhard, Nesmith, Nwora, Toppin, and Isaiah Wong, those 5 guys were all drafted in that 2022 draft. So I can't think of another NBA roster that had so many picks from the same draft on that roster, because you figure they can only dress 12 guys a night. Now some of those guys are not dressed every night, but that's a very, very cool stat, and just shows you really how young this team is. That Wong being 22, Toppin's 25, Miles Turner's 27, Jalen Smith is 23, Nwora is 25, Nesmith 24, Benedict Mathurin, who's I believe on a two-way, is 21, Held 30, Halliburton 23, Bruce Brown 27. So this is a very young team with a lot of very good, poised to make a big turnaround type roster. And then you add in Rick Carlisle in the middle of his second stint with the Pacers, really third if you actually count the time that he was one of the lead assistants when Larry Bird was the head coach, when the Pacers made their run to the finals in the late 90s, during Reggie Miller's heyday. But you also figure it would be nice if Carlisle's second stint as head coach of the Pacers turned out a little bit better than the first. Now, granted, he did get them to a finals, but you also have to realize that next year is the 20-year anniversary of the Malice at the Palace, which if you have not seen the Untold documentary on Netflix, certainly watch it. As good as a lot of those are, I think that was still the benchmark, because also it was the first one. And it was also deemed by Reggie Miller and Jermaine O'Neal in that piece that had that not happened, they would have gone to the finals and probably won the damn thing that year. With the Pacers right now, it's good that they've got this good young talent, and the other aspect is that they're also healthy. There's not a lot of injury history going on here with the Pacers, and it's going to come into very, very key component factor, mixing my metaphors, however you want to call it, over the course of the next couple of years, that they're going to try and run down the Cavaliers and the Milwaukee Bucks in the Central Division. Now, the Cavaliers, we know, are a very loaded and very young team that However, there's a lot of injury history there. Darius Garland has missed extensive time. Jared Allen missed time this year. Evan Mobley, thankfully, has not, other than maybe a week here, week there, with minor injuries in his first couple of years. Isaac Okoro has missed time. Donovan Mitchell has missed a little bit of time over his careers, over the first few years of his career. And then, especially now, to chase down kind of the old guard in the division in the Bucks, with Giannis certainly not getting any younger. Now you add Damian Lillard into that equation. So it's not only the youth, but it's also the fact that they're this young, this hungry, this talented, and this healthy, that is going to mean that the Indiana Pacers, this is going to be their division to contend for over the course of the next couple of years. We're going to see really how good the Dame and Giannis factor is very, very quickly here. If not this year, next year, maybe that window kind of closes over the course of the next 2 years. Cleveland's got a little bit more of an open window here with their youth and how well that Garland and Allen have turned, and Evan Mobley have turned themselves into all-stars, and then you add Donovan Mitchell into that equation, who's a second, third team All-NBA guy, really most years. And then you also add in, Karis LeVert's depth off the bench, helping them out. So, Cleveland, as Milwaukee comes down, Cleveland and Indiana are going to come up, and this is going to be something where you're going to see the Cavs and the Pacers with that 4-hour drive between them, and this is going to be a very, very fun type of rivalry, so to speak, because Detroit's got a lot to get themselves back to where they used to be. The Bulls right now are an absolute mess. The Bulls could end up being the worst team in basketball again this year. So let me know what you guys think. Where do you see the Pacers going this year? Do you think that this is the Pacers catching lightning in a bottle, or do you think there's a little bit more to this? Mike and I will be back with you after our little hiatus on Saturday. We got some programming notes coming up. We've got an announcement for Black Friday. We've got an announcement for our end of year, and which will actually lead into the Wiseies in the very, very early part of January. So everyone take care. I will be back with you guys certainly on the Sports Note next week, and Mike and I will see you guys on Saturday night. Take care.